ラ対デストロイヤー生物出現
Godzilla versus Destoroyah, aka the movie with the greatest title in movie history. I'm 75% kidding, but I mean, it's an amazing title. But this is the conclusion of the Heisei era Godzilla films, and they went out with an absolute bang and a banger indeed, because this movie was so epic in so many ways. But I'm so glad for the final review of this road for the Heisei films. I got this guy on the channel finally. He is over at the Movie Hero Network, the Lonely Marks Wrestling Podcast. It is Austin Pez Howell. Pez, how are you doing?
Oh man, I'm always happy to be talking Godzilla. Of course, anybody who in the community who knows me knows I'm a massive Godzilla fan. I'm glad you're finally kind of getting into him and doing this little series. That's awesome. Always interesting to see somebody when they kind of dive into it head first and really get a feel for these. But yeah, we're talking about. You hit me up and we're like, hey, any particular one, in this range or something like that. And I was like, well, Godzilla versus Destoroyah is my favorite if that one's open. And you were like, yeah. So I was like, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah, the Showa era Godzilla movies, I will admit, were wearing on me a little bit. Like All Monsters Attack was basically a clip show.
When you get to there and like Godzilla's Revenge and Ebra Horror of the Deep, and you're like, whoo, all right, this is yeah, this is getting a little exhausting. Although I will say those are the ones they showed on TV all the time. Just a little backstory for me when I was a kid, so those are the ones they showed a lot because they were very kid friendly. A lot of those kind of middle section ones, Godzilla versus Megalon, all that stuff. So that's the ones you watch as a kid, and it works for like 5-6 year olds. But yeah, as a full grown man, going back and watching at least, yeah, kind of that middle section of the Showa era can be a little tricky. So I feel your pain.
Well, it is like Destroy All Monsters was like the ending. It was set in 99, and like all the
Yes.
monsters were on Monster Island, and be like, all right, this is gonna be the end. And then it's like,
and they're all gonna beat the hell out of King Ghidorah at the end, and like this big rumble, and like it's awesome, and it felt like an ending, but like yeah, then it was like, no, we got to keep going, keep making money.
it's like the Planet of the Apes movies, where you got the beginning with the original, and then the kind of ending with Beneath, and then it's like
Yes.
now it's everything in between.
Right. I mean, what do you do after Charlton Heston blows up the world? Like, when he pulls the lever, it's like, oh, so we just have to go into prequel mode now. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. Yeah, no, but this era that we're talking about here tonight, yeah, this conclusion of the Heisei era. Heisei era is my favorite, mainly because, each one is kind of taken a little more seriously. I like the effects of this era. I think Godzilla looks great in all these movies. The monsters usually look great. And they have a little more of a continuity to them, throughout. They have recurring characters that continue to show up, the commander, the psychics, et cetera, et cetera. Like a couple of people that they at least try to have sort of a continuity, The Millennium era is the worst when you get to that soon. I'm not like spoiling too much, but they kind of like just do these hard reboots almost every movie, and it's a little frustrating that they don't do a lot of continuity with that one. But that's why I like the Heisei era so much. I think it just clicks. It's really
The
good.
vibe that I get from the Millennium movies, and I haven't seen them yet, but
Yeah.
they are coming up next. But after the TriStar one and the Roland Emmerich one, they were like, "What have you done with our child? Like, come
Yes.
back here. We're gonna do this again."
Right. Wait till you see what they do. I won't spoil it. Wait till you see what they do with the Roland Emmerich one in Godzilla Final War. So wait till you get there.
I've seen the clip, so I
Have you
know.
seen the clip? Okay.
I
How they call him Zilla in that movie and what actually happens to him. Yes.
they pretty much bury the Roland
Oh
Emmerich.
yeah, no, they bury him like hardcore. They're like, yeah, that doesn't have anything to do with us. Our boy is gonna whoop some ass on that one. Yeah.
But we are looking ahead. Let us dive into
Yes.
Godzilla versus Destoroyah, which was the finale of the
Mhm.
Heisei era. The Heisei era was actually supposed to end with Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. However,
Yes.
that movie actually made more money than Toho was expecting. So, like, all right, I think we can keep this going. But then both Mothra and then freaking and then Space Godzilla
Yes.
underperformed. So it was like, all right, let's bring this to a close. And this movie brought about national and international news because they broadcast it as Godzilla dies in this one.
Yes.
And of course, Godzilla would be revived again. So that would be
Mhm.
retconned. But in my research, I found the people of Japan were kind of mad about this. They actually started up a fund to be like, bring Godzilla back, like a GoFundMe
Yeah.
before a
Mhm.
GoFundMe almost.
Well, and also, this one this one was a hit just at the box office, but also where they were making the money was the merchandising. The merchandising was out of control, especially around this time. Um, and this movie really revived a lot of the merchandising as well. When people found out it was going to be a Death to Godzilla, I don't know if they thought like, oh, they're going to just stop making Godzilla merchandise after this, so let's just buy everything, because that's kind of what happened. And yeah, I mean, I don't think it's they like regret it or anything like that, because at a certain point you do need to take a break. I mean, they had enough movies here, what, 7 movies, to where it's like you had a little stretch. Again, you had a decent continuity and putting it to rest, to where I don't think it's like a betrayal for them to come back in the Millennium Era with a new movie, because it's like there's always going to be reboots and and continuations and whatnot. So it just kind of is what it is. We see that with franchises constantly.
Yeah, you think it's bad nowadays. Like it's a trend that it's kind of like a Rolling Stone gathers no moss situation,
Right.
I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
But the big plot around Destoroyah is that Godzilla is actually dying. His heart is a big old nuclear reactor, and if something is not done about him, then he's literally going to blow up the planet, and hopefully
Yeah, he's all
soon will.
glowing red and stuff. He's melting down. He's got red going up and down him. He's and it looks and trust me, this doesn't the movie no justice, but on how cool it actually looks in the actual movie, because you get to see it right up front. Yeah, no, he's officially kind of called Burning Godzilla. I like to call him Meltdown Godzilla. I think that's cooler, just because I just think that that's a cooler title, and that kind of is what's happening to him, is he's melting down. But yeah, the look of him is my favorite look of Godzilla I've ever done, just because it looks so badass. Because they added all these, they added a number of light bulbs essentially underneath the suit to make it literally glow, and then a smoke machine basically inside the suit to also look like he's constantly steaming, and every time he's in the water, he's like boiling the water. It just looks awesome. Like every time he's on screen, I can't get enough of this look.
Not gonna lie, the intro to this movie might be my favorite of the Heisei movies, where Godzilla pops out of the water and you just see him glowing red. You're like, what's
Hmm.
happening here? And then it
Yeah.
evolves into, we see the oxygen destroyer, and then the title sequence pops up, and you're just like,
And like, yeah, great little title sequence. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, the score of this one, Akira Fukube, he really went all out with this one. Not just all the classic stuff we know and love, obviously, but Destroyer's actual theme, is great. And then we'll get to it, but the actual theme of Godzilla's death is tremendous as well, and very heartbreaking and emotional. So he outdid himself for this last one, and really put everything. He didn't phone it in for this one, that's for sure.
no, he surely did not.
Mm.
I love how they build up the oxygen destroyer in this one.
Mhm.
They basically treat it as is there any other way? And then be like,
Yeah,
no. So like
no,
this is like the very last thing. Like the quote in Argo is, this is the very best bad option that we have. The oxygen
right.
destroyer is the very best bad option that the G Force, the JDRF, call them whatever you want, that they have right now. This is the ace in the hole.
Yeah. Well, no, and the actual, the meltdown scenario with Godzilla puts a nice little sort of countdown on the movie, a sense of urgency, especially with the G-force and everybody, because it's not just in this movie where there's a threat of another monster, or, in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, where it's like time travel and, erasing Godzilla from history or something like that. Yes, there is a monster that emerges, of course, eventually, which is a threat. But Godzilla himself is the threat, and we got to figure out what to do with him. And well, what's the solution, Jacob? When something's really hot, yeah, cool his ass down, and that's end up becoming kind of a central plot of what we're going to try to do and deal with it.
Pretty much. I thought that the scene in the aquarium where you see the
Yeah.
little fish just like
Uh-huh.
slowly melt away, I'm like, I don't know like how they pulled that off. It
Yeah.
looks so sad because it's just a
Yeah.
little fish like just swimming along, and then all of a sudden just
Yes.
a literal sack of bones.
Uh-huh.
But just it like Destroyers like just basically made up of like little tiny crabs,
Hmm.
but they somehow just make him out to be
They
insane.
just keep they keep evolving throughout the movie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and officially, yeah, I think Destroya has like six forms or something like that. I was looking at the actual kaiju profile earlier today, and yeah, there's like six different forms. I can't help to memorize every single one of them, but essentially, it starts at these little tiny sort of crab creatures. The initial form is that scene is the shortly after what you're talking about, the aquarium, where they kind of emerge as these alien looking, half crab, predator looking creatures, running around. And they even have a little bit of xenomorph in them with like the mouth coming out of the mouth. Obviously that's a little inspiration from James Cameron there. But yeah, I mean, they continue to evolve, like, and they got to figure out what to do. But yeah, I mean, that's a good place to start, I guess. Like the where the movie really picks up is that sequence where they're running throughout that building and the SWAT team is trying to take down, the individual forms. And it felt very horror movie. Like I like that whole sequence a lot because yeah, they're trying to shoot them, it's not working. They figure out flamethrowers work a little bit, so they go all in on that. But yeah, there's some real horror sequences. Dude's getting hit with like oxygen rays and getting like melted down. And yeah, I mean, them getting chased all in and out of the building, it's pretty great.
The joy of that sequence is just watching the humans be like, oh, that's not work, let's try this. Oh, that doesn't
Hmm.
work, let's try this. And just
Yeah.
seeing like the floor consistently fall out from underneath
Hmm.
them. It
Yes.
just it's just as a horror fan myself, I'm like, this is so good. Like I've
Yeah.
seen,
Yeah.
and this is technically a horror movie. It's a monster.
Look, I consider most Godzilla movies are still monster movies, and to
Yeah.
me, monster movies are subsets of horror. So,
Yeah.
I've always considered even the original Gojira is a horror film at its heart because it's still a monster movie. Even Godzilla minus one is
Yeah.
still at its heart a monster movie, so technically a horror movie. How much they lean into the horror depends on the actual film. Godzilla's Revenge with the little kid running around in the dream sequences isn't so much horror, as some of the other ones, but technically they're monster movies. So, I mean, I classify it as that.
Horror on the ears, more like. But
Yes.
I guess it's a good place as any to parlay into talking about Godzilla Jr., as he's known in the movie. I,
Yes.
I kind of bounce between him, Manila, the son of Godzilla, but
Mhm.
he is in this movie and dies for a time. And I'm like, wow, I did not think they were going to go down that route.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I far prefer the son of Godzilla from this era than Showa because the Showa one, the design just looked awful. And
The
then just the
design, he looks like a Muppet that got like half melted and then came out of the oven. Like, you know what he looks like? Did you ever watch the original Power Rangers? Like the
no,
old school
sadly I
original?
have.
So there's a guy named Finster, and he used to put these like molds of like putty, and they look like Play-Doh into like an oven, before he'd make the putty patrollers. And he looks like a deformed like putty patroller or something. Like it just looks terrible. Like yeah, that Minya or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, he's just not a good character, and especially when they have the horrendous voice when they actually make him talk. In those movies, Godzilla says, "I gotta fight my own battles." It's just like, what are we doing? No, this one, at least in this movie, I know he kind of progresses throughout the Heisei era, but at least in this movie, he looks like Godzilla, just not as big. But he at least like he actually looks like the what you're going to get to. He looks like the Millennium era Godzilla. Actually, he's a little more like kind of longer and leaner a little bit. Like he's got kind of a different structure to him. He moves a little bit different. The Millennium one is a little, I guess, lankier is the right word. He's not as like bottom heavy as the Heisei one is. But yeah, he's at least he's like kind of fully formed in here, and it gets to have a little action in this movie.
Yeah, and like I said, he dies like for a brief time. He gets revived, but he dies.
Right.
That was that was difficult. And then what makes it even worse is the fact that Godzilla is like pretty much depressed that he lost his son, which makes his condition somehow even worse.
Yes.
So it's like it's just a compound effect of just he starts out like full blown nuclear, and then it goes to like 3 Mile Island, and then it's like we are in the end game now.
Yeah. No, for sure. And at least yeah, before he sort of dies, yeah, we like I said, he gets a little action. He gets into a fight with the kind of, not the final perfect form as he's called of Destoroyah, but the like flying form and whatnot, kind of an intermediary form. But he gets his licks in. I mean, when he's on the ground and he's getting pummeled, he still gets his heat ray out there and cuts off a few limbs here and there and gets his shots in. He doesn't quite like fully win, but he bounces him off them right before he takes the perfect form. But man, that sequence, and I wanted to bring this up, the shot where he Destoroyah finally emerges in his perfect form, like with the score and like the fireball that comes out. It's like a demon emerging from hell. It's pretty amazing, like that actual sequence. And for anybody who needs a visual, I have him right here as well. That's Destoroyah. As you can see, he just looks like a bat demon from the ninth circle of hell or something, just some like dragon demon, and it's pretty amazing to look at. Actually, it's a great design.
I was watching VHS 99 the other day, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a big old, and I'm sure Pez, you know this one, but
Yes.
for the ones that don't, VHS 99 is a horror anthology, and one of the shorts is called To Hell and Back, where the main characters of the shorts literally go to hell, like actual
Yes.
Christian
Yes.
hell. How
And
the
they're running
camcorder
around. Yeah.
works, I still don't know. But there is a brief in the shadow shot of the devil in there.
Yes.
Like
Uh-huh.
it's brief. If you're not looking for him, you're gonna miss him. But you see the devil for like a split second. Like when Destoroyah pops up, I'm like, oh, that's where like the VHS 99 devil is. It kind of looks sort of similar, I guess, in a weird way.
Maybe the guys who made the short are big Godzilla fans, and I don't know. They got some inspiration. Who knows? But it also just looks like anything kind of, like I said, hell spawn, dragon spawn, whatever. But he looks amazing, and yeah, when he emerges in his full form, not only is it a great design, but he's brutal. I mean, he takes down Junior. He gets on top of him. He's grounding and pounding Junior, slashing at him, sucking his blood, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. One thing I like about this movie that you don't get in a lot of the other Godzillas, there's blood and guts in this movie, like
Yeah.
a decent amount of it. When Godzilla and Destoroyah are going toe to toe later, like close up, Destoroyah's like using his horn. He's like slashing Godzilla, and there's blood going everywhere. Godzilla's like raking at him with his claws, and there's like green goo, yellow blood, all kinds of stuff going everywhere. Like I like that you feel the impact of it because it's all practical stuff, which is why I keep coming back to this era and why I just can't click with like these new Godzilla Kong movies because it's so CGI. I just don't feel it, like I feel it with these movies.
It feels it's funny you bring that up because I said in my other reviews that whenever Godzilla and Mechagodzilla fight, that's when those are my favorite fights of theirs because like whenever they show up, it's like shit's on. But it's
Oh yeah.
especially true with this movie because it's like a death match. Like they just
Oh
go
yeah.
in there with just I'm like, all right, like one of us is making it and it's damn sure not going to be you. And
Hell no.
so they just go full force with it. And to your point about like say I'll just call it the monster verse,
The Monsterverse, yeah.
the monster verse Godzilla and Kong movies. I haven't watched them in a while. I have to rewatch them for this series, but I like them. But now having seen now all of Heisei, this is definitely the best era for like fights because
Yeah.
as impressive as the CGI is, there's something about the practical knowing that there are people in these suits actually like and people like to joke about, oh, the dudes in rubber suits. Like, there's still people in the suits, though, and they're still
Yeah.
doing stunts and they're taking risks. And so that's always going to be more over with me than, like, say, stuff you can make in Adobe After Effects, I
Well,
guess.
and and again, shout out to, and unfortunately, we lost him back in December. I'm sure you talked about it, but Kenpachiro Satsuma, who played Godzilla throughout the entire Heisei era, passed away back in December of last year. And yeah, he's a dude. If you look at his interviews and whatnot, he takes his stuff seriously as an actor. Not just as like a stunt performer, but there's a way that he does the movements. There's a way he has to, especially in this movie, as you talked about, Jacob, when Junior, he thinks is dead, and he kind of has this, uh, kind of freak out, and he's mourning essentially Junior. There's a way where he emotes inside the suit, and these movements where he has to convey that emotion because obviously he doesn't have any dialogue, but he takes that stuff seriously as an actor, and so does everybody who's ever donned the actual Godzilla costume. And unfortunately, there's only one left with I'm blanking on his name. The guy who plays him in the Millennium series is still with us, but Showa era actor passed away a number of years back, and Kenpachiro passed away very recently. And these guys, there's an art to what they do, and there's documentaries that show these guys on the hand movements and the way they step around. I mean, it's no different than a director directing an actual live action actor and what they have to convey in their movements as well, for what they have to do for the script.
I believe the dude you're looking for is Satomu Kitagawa.
Kigawa, yeah, he's still with us, I believe. But yeah, he's the last one. Yeah, the gentleman who played him originally in the Showa era has passed away as well. So I mean, we're starting to lose these actors, and there's an art to it, and the way of CGI, you lose that. I think that connection with the character, and with these actors who know how to portray this kind of stuff. And to me, it will never have the same impact, Jacob, as when there's a guy, yes, in a suit, but fighting another guy in a suit, and there's like models everywhere, and there's buildings being destroyed, and it's real props and real stuff. Like, I just feel that way harder than just two CGI characters, mashing up against each other. Just me personally, which is why I like this stuff.
So, thank you for bringing up the fact that the actor who played him in the Heisei era passed away, because I legit did not know that. So
Oh, okay, yeah. It was
I think
it
I
was very, very recently. Yeah, it was big news in the Godzilla fandom that he passed away because he was doing conventions and stuff, in the last, 10 years or so. You can go watch Q&As with him at different conventions and whatnot, and you could see some fun footage of when somebody would show up at the convention in a Godzilla outfit, and he would bring him up on stage and tell him how to do the movements, like do this with your hands and step this way, and all this. It's just really fun. Like, he seemed like a guy who, again, really cared about his craft, and there's a lost art to that of the monster actor, if you will. And he actually started out, before he even played Godzilla in the Heisei era, he was playing monsters in the Showa era. He played Gigan several times. He played the Smog monster. He played various. He was one of the guys that got pseudo kidnapped in North Korea for Pulgasari. I don't know if you know that story. There's a movie called Pulgasari that's never been released that Kim Jong Il, before Kim Jong Un, that is now Kim Jong Un, basically captured the Godzilla team and made them make him a monster movie. Like, that's a real story, by the way. Go
wow.
look into that. It's called Pulgasari.
How do you
Yeah,
spell that?
Pul, like it sounds, Gasari, Pulgasari. I mean, if you just kind of Google North Korean kaiju movie, you'll find it, and it's Pulgasari. And there's a whole thing about how he essentially, like, it was basically like, hey, come to this thing. I want to meet you guys, or something like that. And then he basically held them there for 2 months and made them make a movie. It was it was an insane story.
So
Where
kind
he had
of
to make a
sort of
movie.
like the intern, I get, or not, or the interview, I should say.
Yeah, kind of like the interview. No, it was a whole North Korean thing, and it was nuts. Yeah, go look into that. But Kim Fichero was part of that. He had to play Pulgasari and make this movie that's never been seen. There's like stills of it and a few brief clips, but obviously it's just never made it outside of North Korea. But that's a whole nother story for another time. I'm tangenting, but it still relates to the kaiju movie. But also, I was talking about, again, the care that gets put into these movies, and you can tell that the people making this one, especially this one where it's Godzilla's death, essentially really cared about what they were doing, and put a real effort into it, and they have a real love for this character in this franchise.
Yeah, and to kind of put a bow on things, this movie would end up being the highest grossing domestic movie. I stress domestic, not
Yes.
international, but the highest grossing domestic
Mhm.
movie in Japan. And the company that it kept included movies like, and I'm going to find the list because I did find it. I'm going to find the list because these are some pretty big movies to be in the conversation of, at least domestically. Twister, Seven, and the first Mission Impossible. So
Okay.
so that's not too bad. It made about 3.5 billion yen, which is 42 million in our dollars. So it made a nice, healthy chunk of money, and it was
Yeah.
a nice way to see out the character, at least for the next four-ish, five-ish years.
Yeah, for sure. And you know how I first ended up seeing these movies, Jacob, is it was hard times years ago to be a Godzilla fan and try to get a hold of these these especially the Heisei era was hard to get a hold of. The Showa era eventually a lot of those made it to VHS and a few DVDs here and there. But these Heisei eras are pretty elusive. I had to go to conventions, and I'm not proud of this, but I would have if they were available, I would have. I mean, they were available later. I have the Blu-rays now, those double Blu-rays and whatnot. So I do support them, but I had to get like these DVD bootleg DVDs of like these Heisei era movies, and the first one I bought was Godzilla 1985. In like a bootleg era that was like a VHS rip, from Japan essentially, and to see these movies because I knew there was this whole other section I had never seen, but they were hard to get a hold. I mean, this is like mid 2000s. I mean, the Blu-rays finally came out in like 2012, 2013, something like that, and I have all of those, in my collection. Obviously, I purchased them, legally and whatnot. But it was tough times for Godzilla trying to see these movies, and when I finally, got a hold of them, I was so happy. Like they were just everything I wanted, a little more serious. The effects were great, and it was kind of everything I wanted in these monster movies.
But I can just see it now. They're like, "Hey, buddy, you got any Heisei? Like, come around
Yeah, yeah, right.
back."
I know. Go through that door over there. Yeah, Jimmy will hook you up. Yeah. What do you want? You want a little Space Godzilla? I got the Space Godzilla. You want a little? What do you want? You want a little Biolante? I got some Biolante for you. What do you got?
One hit's not gonna hurt, but
Yeah, yeah, right.
the internet has pretty much cut out that middleman as far as I'm aware. But
Yes,
I
yes.
would have loved to have seen that go down. But to kind of close things out here, on my scale, Godzilla versus Destoroyah is absolutely amazing. They capped this series off brilliantly, started
Mhm.
off strong, kept it that way, and then ended with just the best note you could ever ask for.
Yeah.
I'll go on record saying this is probably the best individual Godzilla movie, or one of the best. If like I was making a top five, this would happily be in the conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely like in my top five Godzilla movies. I mean, the one, number two right now are always going to be the original Gojira and Godzilla minus one because I think they're almost on the same level.
Yeah.
But as far as like everything else that came after that, as far as all these other eras, I mean, Godzilla versus Destoroyah is in there. Godzilla versus King Ghidorah from '91 is in there. I just really love that movie, mainly because come on, how badass is Mecha Ghidorah from that
That
movie? I mean, it's
that is
amazing.
that is
I
awesome.
mean, come on, it's awesome. He's great. And you'll get to. I mean, I have my other ones over here. You'll get to Final Wars guy again. He's cool as shit too, but you'll get there.
Oh no,
But
I didn't
anyways,
like Gigan all that much in Showa, so I'm not sure how I'm gonna feel.
he's I like him as a design. He's pretty cool. But anyways, like the original Godzilla versus Mothra is in there somewhere. The original Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, is in there. I love like Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla. Some of those show era ones that are like in that top 10 or something like that. This one will always be top five just because it's my top of the Heisei era, and that's saying something. So I think they took a great care with Godzilla in this one, and he earned his rest, for a little while. He'd been cranking out great movies all throughout this era, and there's nothing wrong with taking a little break. And my only gripe, and this has nothing to do with the movie, they've been showing Godzilla movies a lot lately in theaters, actually. For like random events and whatnot. And I'm hoping we get more this year, being the 70th anniversary of Godzilla overall.
Yeah.
But I got to see Godzilla 2000 last year in a theater. I got to see Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla as far as the Millennium Era version, and Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which those two go hand in hand. They're kind of, one's a sequel to the other one. I want them to show more Heisei era movies. They've been showing all the Millennium era movies, which is all great. I'm happy to go watch Godzilla in the theater. But for God's sakes, show some of these Heisei movies because they're awesome. And I'd love to see those in the theater. And at least at the 70th anniversary, please, somebody should just show the original Gojira in the theater. I would love to see that. I've never been able to see the original one on the big screen. And when else are you going to do it but for the 70th anniversary? I mean, come on, guys.
Yeah, if for nothing else. And it's interesting, like the Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla movies are confusing with their titles because there's Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla,
yes,
and there's Terror of Mechagodzilla, then there's Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, which is technically 3, but it's somehow called 2. And then in Millennium, it's called Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla.
And then Godzilla Tokyo SOS has Mechagodzilla and is a sequel to Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla, but you wouldn't know that by the title. So yeah,
like, my brain hurts a little.
Oh yeah, no, your brain hurt. Yeah, it's a little confusing. I don't know if it's as bad as the Fast and Furious series, or keeping up with some of those Texas Chainsaw Massacre continuities or anything like that. But still, it's comparable for sure once they get to that era.
But I pass it off to all of you. What did you all think of Godzilla versus Destoroyah? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. Pez, thank you so much for being on. I want to have you back on as soon as possible. But as far as what you've got going on, the Movie Hero Network is popping off. The Scenic Bird tournament is about to get started.
Yes,
I'm going to be a part of it, so I'm looking forward to that. But what else you got?
No, I mean, that's mainly what I do. I do a little bit of other things that are kind of on hiatus right now. I do Movie Battleground, which is a debate show. We're on TMG Entertainment. I'm a pretty high-level competitor over there, if I may say so myself. I just am. But, I do other trivia leagues, obviously a show about trivia and whatnot. I'm in there. But, yeah, you can mainly find me over on the Movie Hero Network. Jacob's been on many times for different tournaments and trivias and whatnot. And, yeah, you can find everything from a podcast about movies to tournament fights to ranker fights, Lonely Marks Wrestling Podcast League now, everything in between over on the Movie Hero Network. Lots of stuff going on. We would love a chance to earn your subscription over there. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me, man. I'll talk Godzilla with you anytime you want to talk Godzilla, man. So anytime you want, you hit me up and let me know. We'll make it happen.
Maybe when they make Godzilla -2 or whatever this
I would propose you call it Godzilla Ground Zero.
Oh, that's not bad, actually.
Keep the number thing, but maybe they get back to 0 instead of -1. You call it Godzilla Ground Zero. I think that would be a pretty dope title myself, actually.
The next one be like Godzilla +1 or something.
Yeah. I don't know. Do something, but Godzilla Ground Zero. I'm copywriting it right now. I'm trademarking it. It's going to be in my bag. I'm going to get paid for that.
It's in the books. But
yes, right.
The Movie Hero Network's channel will be linked in the description. Go give them a subscribe. Tournament Fights just celebrated 200 episodes, so that's cause for celebration there. I've been a part of that. That was a great time. Or not that specific one, but I've been on.
You've been a part of many of our tournaments, yeah, for sure. Yes. So I know anybody that's been a part of these tournaments, we certainly appreciate it because it's been a long road to get there, but we've had a lot of fun doing it.
But as far as this series goes, we will be leaving the Heisei era behind, and we'll be entering some real shit. We're going to be talking about the Roland Emmerich Godzilla movie next. I don't want to, but unfortunately, I have to.
We listen, as Godzilla fans, we don't talk about that one, Jacob. You can just skip it if you want to. I know you don't got to be a completionist, but Godzilla fans, we don't talk about that movie, okay? I mean, I know you have to, but
I'm gonna do it out of protest.
Spoiler alert: he gets killed with missiles. What kind of horse shit is that?
Yeah. Anyway, for Pez, my name is Ryan Cam. We'll see you in the next one. Y'all take care.